Hexa-Dimensional space-time. Hello again, my friends, thank you for being here with me once more. I hope you are happy and well today. I send you all a big hug. I am Mari. This information can be seen as science fiction, or as the viewer sees best, and I post it for entertainment purposes only. Still, I take my information very seriously, and for whoever has eyes to see. Thank you for all your wonderful questions for Ari, the Irma tiger. I will be interviewing him next Thursday. Please remember that although I will do my best to pass as many as possible to him, it is impossible to answer all the questions, even more so because the big cat sometimes gets over talkative and extends himself too much with only one. To understand this information thoroughly, I recommend seeing the video I published immediately before this one. On Earth, the perception of time, as an experience, heavily influences how science views and studies it as well, mostly in disciplines such as physics and astrophysics. On Earth, the universe is explained as having 3 dimensions in space and 1 in time. As I described in my last video, this last one is viewed as a line, inexorably traveling from past to present towards the future. This 4-dimensional existential model is also used by many New Age authors, but adding that there can be several potential futures, where they state that humanity must do their best to jump to, quote, a more positive timeline, end quote. Contrasting this 4-dimensional view, advanced interstellar cultures view and study time using a 6-dimensional model, where there are 3 dimensions in space, and 3 dimensions in time. Please notice here the perfectly congruent correspondence between the 6-dimensional model, made of 3 plus 3, with base 12 mathematics, where the entire universe is operating with the 3, 6, 9, and 12 mathematical rules. It is here where you can start to see that the 4-dimensional model used on Earth lacks the understanding of at least 2 dimensions in time, and this badly affects the results of all human science mathematical models used in astrophysics. This causing mathematical calculations and their results to be erroneous, as they end up not reflecting the so-called outside world, even though their formulas and calculations may still be correct, but only from the self-corroborating and self-sustained, base 10 mathematical model. Science on Earth simply lacks the necessary understanding to include 2 more dimensions in their time factors in their mathematical formulas used in physics and astrophysics. Even Nikola Tesla and his famous 3, 6, 9 principle does not contemplate the necessary added factor 12 in his free energy model. This creates an energetic imbalance between the side of the ether, which is represented by the numbers 3, 6, 9, and the side of the material world, which is represented by the numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 0, as it should be 3, 6, 9, and 12. Verses 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11, and 0, as seen and observed in base 12 mathematical models, applied not only to free energy and interstellar travel, but also to understanding time, including its practical navigation. Where 10 and 11 are also seen as combinations of 1 and 0. The 6-dimensional cosmological model is critical for the correct understanding of how the universe works, and it is the very base of just about all non-human science, as it is understood by interstellar cultures. 3 dimensions in space are represented as they are understood on Earth, with the Cartesian coordinates model, where they are often denoted by the letters X, Y, and Z. And where the axes may then be referred to as the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, respectively. And with which we can pinpoint any location in space, in mathematics usually represented by a cube, although it should be represented more as a sphere for added accuracy, although this does complicate some of the formulas to be used. In the same way as the Cartesian model represents a location in space, using the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, so can we represent a moment in time the same way, using the letters u, v, and w to represent its axis. This represents our six-dimensional model with the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis representing a location in space, and the u-axis, v-axis, and w-axis representing a moment in time. On Earth, astrophysics claims that the universe is expanding, which it is not for interstellar cultures and their science, because expansion indicates speed, and speed is linked to a time frame, to calculate movement, but as time is relative to the observer, it is impossible to calculate at what rate the universe is supposed to be expanding. On Earth, this is calculated by a light Doppler-like effect where something like a star, which is moving away from the observer, starts to shift its light wavelength from its natural white towards red, or infrared, as the frequency wavelength of the light it is emitting is being stretched by its speed as it moves away from the observer. For advanced interstellar cultures and their science, this redding light effect is explained in another way, which is not contemplated by Earth's science, or it is only at the beginning of its efforts to comprehend this other explanation. Space is not empty, it is a fluid at a very high existential density, which is the ether, so when light travels through vast distances in space, it encounters resistance as it travels through this high-frequency etheric fluid, and with it, it loses much of its other colors within its spectrum, leaving only the red spectrum of colors as they are the ones capable of traveling the farther without being filtered by the ether fluid. By the way, that etheric high existential frequency fluid is why I call my channel, quote, Swaruu Official, information from the waters above. End quote. Using 6 coordinates to explain the universe, from the point of view of highly advanced interstellar cultures, and using geometrical models for this purpose, view in your mind 2 spheres, each one formed by its axes. The first sphere represents space, and it is formed by the x, y, and z axes. And the second sphere, which represents time, is shaped by the u, v, and w axis. Now, proceed to bring together both spheres, make one fit inside the other to form only one sphere, and blend them together in your mind. Now you have one megasphere which represents the universe, as it is understood by highly advanced interstellar cultures, which use base 12 mathematics. And, where that supersphere is shaped, and created by 6 axes, which are x, y, and z, plus u, v, and w. This mathematical and geometrical model, which is a sphere with 6 axes, can be used to pinpoint any location in space, and also at which exact moment in time such location is found. This turns time into another calculable location, which can be found and predicted using tridimensional space formulas very similar to the basic equations for spheres, and which added with the other 3 axes in space we now have to use super-complex hexadimensional equations for the sphere, to be able to calculate a location in space, and in its one exact moment in time. It is important to say here that such a hexadimensional supersphere would be infinite in size, collapsing the idea of the geometrical sphere we have to use as a mental reference for our understanding. In our perception, as we can represent our life experience with a line of sequential events, from our birth to our now, moving towards the future, we also experience time in a more or less linear way, because we are basing the sequence of those events as a sequence associated with a one-dimensional time frame. When using the hexadimensional model, we can draw a line of events which represents our life experience inside the sphere, and any place or segment within that line can be found and represented with its corresponding coordinates within the 6 axes of the supersphere as 6 coordinates. As I have explained before, time and space are only illusions of the mind, egregores of consciousness, so our perception of time and space are what manifest reality from our particular points of view as points of attention of source. This means that our perception of time is linear, and our life as a sequence of ordered events within that time frame is a perfectly valid perception and experience. Using a practical example, today we may start to plan a trip back in time, which we will do tomorrow, and the target location is here today. At this very time we started to plan such a trip. Using classic human examples, science on Earth thinks this is not possible simply because that would mean that we here today planning our trip back to this very moment, a trip we will do tomorrow, would have to see ourselves arrive today. And as we do not see ourselves arrive, using science on Earth, we conclude that time travel is not possible, because if it were, then we would see our future self arrive now, today. This paradox cannot occur in a hexa-dimensional space-time model, because there, we would not necessarily see ourselves visiting from the future. After all, from our point of view, we haven't traveled yet, even though we are planning to, so expecting to see ourselves arrive in the future has no logic to it. It is only from the point of view of ourselves, after we travel, that we can see ourselves arriving to visit a flabbergasted younger version of ourselves, in our yesterday, and with this, we have opened a parallel universe, one which can only be visible for the traveler, and who has created it by the simple fact that he or she has observed the past, altering it by mere presence. But this also means that the day before is not the exact same day we lived before traveling back in time. It is a different day with a different situation. Using the hexa-dimensional space-time model, as time is traveling in all its 3 axes, as we traveled back in time to our yesterday, we may have gone back in one of the axes, but not in all 3. Therefore, even though it is our yesterday, the exact same date with a number in the calendar and all, time has moved in another 2 dimensions, with this explaining existence in an alternate yesterday. This also means something very important. Notice how things can only happen once, that basic principle is not violated, and even our best super powerful holographic navigation computers find it super difficult and complex to calculate the temporal differential between all 3 axes in time, because the necessary calculations become exponentially more complicated. With this calculation problem, errors can, and do appear in temporal navigation, sometimes causing strong complications. One single small calculating mistake can cause an exponential chain of events that can get you lost in time and space. Explaining this time-jumping problem, simplifying it a bit more, it is as if time, as we perceive it, is moving along a line, and segments in that line can be understood as dates, so each time we jump from one date to a past one, we do not arrive over the line we just lived through, because time has moved in another direction, in another dimension, sideways for this example. So, no matter how many times we time jump to the exact same date, we will never arrive at the same point in our hexa-dimensional supersphere, because our timeline would have moved along the other 2 temporal axes as well. So, as we go time jumping, looking for one exact same point in space and time, each time we jump it is as if our personal timeline were producing, or moving like a spiral. We may have gone back in time to the same date, but it's not the same point in time, because it also moved in its other 2 axes as we did our jump. And it is the mind and the consciousness of the time traveler who is causing that time expansion spiraling effect, by the simple fact that he or she is aware of the time jump, of the time travel. And yes, mind and consciousness are that powerful, and even the best navigation computers cannot compete against the marvelous power of a conscious and aware mind, which is source itself manifesting as a person having an experience in a biological body, or wherever. Understanding more complexity in existence is directly related to living and thinking in a higher density, with its resulting, more complex dimensions. This will be all for today. I haven't finished, far from it, and I'm going towards something. Thank you for watching my video, and for liking, sharing and subscribing. I appreciate it very much, and it helps me a lot. And I hope to see you here next time. Take care. With much love, your friend, Mari Swaruu.